This video introduces the last of 3 tools we can use to help us to approach poetry. We can think of them as things to bear in mind, expectations we can have when we read a poem. Let me very quickly review what I said in the first 2 videos on this topic. Firstly, I argued that we approach texts with an expectation about how texts work. For example, we approach a story with the expectation that it'll have a beginning, a middle, and an end, that it'll have characters, that the characters will go through certain experiences, and that some of them will be changed in some way as a result. A lot of the difficulty that readers have with poetry comes from the fact that very often they don't have any very clear ideas about what to expect. I said that a poem is a picture, or a series of pictures, and that therefore we should think about what we can see in our mind's eye when we read a poem. I also said that a poem is a voice, so we should think about who is speaking and who is being spoken to, even if it's only the poet speaking to the reader. I'll have more to say about both of those, but the main purpose of today's video is to present the third tool, which is this. A poem is a balance of opposites. That might not be quite so straightforward and obvious as the first 2 tools. Think of it like this. There are things in life that we feel good about, that put us at ease, and there are things that cause us stress, things we feel bad about. So there's positive and there's negative. Most poems, certainly most poems in the Western tradition, are in some sense an exploration of this tension between positive, comfortable elements and negative, anxiety-making elements. These opposing elements are more or less universal. We all want to be loved. We all fear death. This is the language of the heart, not the language of the mind. And it is essentially a very simple language. Even if we don't understand the exact content of a piece of language, we can very often sense the feeling behind it. We can guess whether particular elements are positive or negative, even if we don't know exactly what they mean. Developing that ability, trusting to our instincts about language rather than rushing to the dictionary, is one of the most precious skills we can work on, and poetry gives us many opportunities to do so. Let's turn once again to Matthew Arnold's Dover Beach. In the opening lines, Arnold describes the scene beyond the window and calls to someone to join him in admiring the view.
The sea is calm tonight. The tide is full, the moon lies fair upon the straits. On the French coast, the light gleams and is gone. The cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast out in the tranquil bay. Come to the window, sweet is the night air.
Then he says,
Only from the long line of spray where the sea meets the moon-blanched land, listen. You hear the grating roar of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling at their return up the high strand, begin and cease, and then again begin with tremulous cadence slow, but bring the eternal note of sadness in.
Look at how the mood changes. If I had to pick a key word from there that seems to sum up the mood of the opening lines, it would be calm. But the following lines are anything but calm. The picture, the image, becomes multimedia with sound, a grating roar and a tremulous cadence, and movement as the waves draw back and fling. The short, simple, balanced phrases of the first 6 lines contrasts strongly with the long and complex sentence that fills the next few lines, and the whole thing builds up to the word sadness, which I feel is the key word summing up that section of the poem. Even if we don't understand everything in this second section, we can clearly feel that it's in contrast with the positive atmosphere of the opening lines. I've made a full analysis of Arnold's poem elsewhere, as a shorter version and a longer version, so I won't repeat it all here. The point is, though, that we can find the same kind of tension, this balance between opposite or conflicting elements, in pretty much any poem. In the last video, I talked about the poetic voice in William Blake's short poem, The Clod and the Pebble. It's pretty clear that the Clod's view of love is completely opposite to the Pebble's. In this case, though, it's not so easy to say which element is positive and which is negative. The sacrificing nature of the Clod is superficially positive, whereas the Pebble appears selfish, controlling and cruel. But critics have often noticed that there's something spineless about the Clod, which allows itself to be trodden underfoot, even by those who care nothing for it. We can't assume that Blake approves 100% of the Clod, or that he disapproves 100% of the Pebble. What we can do is think about the two views of love and form our own point of view. Arnold's poem, too, ends on a heavily negative note, but holds out the hope that, perhaps, by being sincere in our feelings towards others, we can do something to soften the harshness of this world.
Ah, love, let us be true to one another. For the world, which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. And we are here, as on a darkling plain, swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night. Looking overall at the positive and negative elements of the poem, well, he starts off by saying that the world is a beautiful place. But that quickly turns negative as he comes to contemplate the idea that, well, the world doesn't care about us. So then he moves on to faith as another possible positive. But again, the mood becomes negative as he considers the fact that we've lost our faith. And then in a final attempt to find something positive that may outweigh these factors, he turns to his love. In fact, it's his wife. And he wonders if perhaps that is enough to counterbalance the negative elements that are all around him. But he nevertheless ends with that same negativity. The world is a terrible place. He would like it, I think, if the love that he had for his wife, if the love that people could have for each other were enough to sustain them and carry them through. But he's not holding his breath.
This is typical in poetry, and indeed in literature in general. Rather than telling us what to think, the writer will often simply point to the tension between opposing forces and leave it to the reader to think about it. And that brings me back to something I said in an earlier video. If you study language, the central question is, what does it mean? Whereas if you study literature, the question you need to answer is, what does it mean to me? All the tools, all the analytical equipment you bring to a poem or any text help you to develop a relationship towards it, leading you to draw your own conclusions. Do you want to love like a clod or like a pebble? Or neither? Can a sincere relationship with another person ease your journey through life? And so on. Poetry, literature in general, presents these kinds of questions for you to think about. It doesn't answer them for you. Only you can do that.